Hello, my Lord of the Flies gang. So now after you have finished your design element, this is part of your grade, so don't forget to do a colored design of where you're headed. Now it's time to start building onto the mask. So today we're going to make what's called the armature or the framework for your mask. And those of you who did the Oaxacan sculptures with me in the elective class remember how we did this. We're just going to add objects onto here with tape and paper mache, and then we'll have to let it dry and we can start painting next time. So think about what you want to do. Remember, everybody has to add at least one element onto their mask, and if you want to add two, that's fine. I'm thinking I'm going to bring this nose out as an element. You might want to concentrate on all the wrinkles or the heavy eyebrows. But I'm also thinking I might want to do these ears. So the next step for me, after I decide what I'm going to do, is to decide what objects I'm going to use to build up that mask. So let's look at some of our options. So when I'm looking for objects to build masks, I usually head for my recycling bin. Tubes are great. These are wonderful too. You can cut these to get them different heights that you want. The only problem is they're super sharp, so you've got to be really careful of those edges. Corrugated cardboard is really great for, it's so strong. Poster board is good because it's strong too. What we want to avoid is something like a piece of paper. Once you get wet paper mache onto this piece of paper, it is absolutely going to just crumble. So that's not going to give you any kind of support. You want to have something supportive. So if I go back to my picture and look at that, I could start making some decisions. Like maybe I want to work on that nose with the end of this Coke can. That might be a little bit too big. But then look, I have this other can that's a little bit smaller. So that might be a better option for the nose. Here's what you want to remember. Whatever you build onto your mask, you want to make it bigger. Bigger is always better, especially when you're trying to do something scary. Bigger teeth are scarier than little tiny teeth. My dog has little tiny pointy teeth, and that's not real scary. Bigger eyes, bigger nose, bigger ears. Once they're big, we can always make them smaller, okay? So, you know, I can think about cutting this off and using that for the nose. I could use this poster board for the ears, or maybe even just cut up some of this box and use that corrugated cardboard for the ears. So let me start thinking about what I'm going to use. Found objects, anything you have laying around the house is great. If you remember that one mask with all the little points coming out of it, I'm thinking if I cut off some golf tees and use those little points, that might be good too, and glue them on there. So let's think about stuff like that. So when you think about building things, think about basic shapes, cones and cylinders. Here's a great cylinder, but maybe it's too long. Well, that's easy enough. I can cut it off and make it shorter. All right, and what if I want to make a cone? Think about how you can change some of the shapes you already have, okay? This is a really nice sturdy piece of cardboard. So maybe if I just wrap it around this way and tape it and cut it off the length I want it, I get a really good cone on there. So that might make a really good horn to come out of the top of his head or anything like that. If you want a smaller one, then you just wrap it up even smaller. You can also cut off some of the extra. See, so now it's a thinner cone, things like that. So kind of think of how you can use shapes you already have and change them into shapes that you want that'll meet your needs. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. I want to bring the nose out for sure. So I found this cap in the recycling too small, okay? I found this Coke can, I think, a little bit too big. I mean, it is big, and we did talk about exaggeration, but that might be overdoing it. So this one is probably just right, okay? And I like the flexibility of this aluminum that I can kind of cut it, shape it around the nose, and make it stay nice and kind of even. Again, be careful because this is super sharp, all that aluminum on there. But if I give it a little clip, then you can see how that would work around his nose a little bit. and I can get it nice and flat on the mask. So that will work, and I'll tape this in place. Then I use corrugated cardboard to cut a couple of ears. I drew on them the way I wanted. I cut them together so they would be symmetrical, and then I can put those back there. Now remember, we talked about, do I want to glue them this way? That doesn't look angry enough. I want to glue them nice and flat across the top to give them that kind of angry look. And then I've got that nose on there. Then I'm so intrigued by these massive eyebrows and how they slant downward, even covering up some of the eye. So I took a paper towel and I rolled it up really, really tight. Not just wadded it, but really rolled it up. And I'm thinking that I could put those down here. Of course, it's way too long. I'm going to have to trim it up and stuff. But if I make another one and put those over these eyes, that might be pretty dramatic too. So let me get started on those. All right, status check, just to see how things are going. I taped down his nose all the way around there so that it's nice and solid. Now I was a little bit concerned about how flexible that aluminum is, so I stuffed it with paper towels so it has a little bit more strength to it. And you may want to do that with your other shapes, especially if you use like poster board. Stuff them to make them solid. I took my paper towel eyebrow and I glued it on there, and I made another one. And you can see where I cut it right there. So I'll just take the tape, little strips of tape right there, and kind of finish it off so it's a little bit smoother. And then I will glue this one on the other side. And he'll have those big old ugly eyebrows on there. So I'll glue this one down on that side too, making sure to get that nice crazy angle. Now on his ears, I like this overlap. I like where that ear comes up and flaps over a little bit. And so on his ear, I just added a couple of layers of cardboard on there so that you have that flap. And when I paint it, I can paint it darker under here so it'll really enhance that flap. Then I had this little tab built onto my ear, and I took the tab and bent it so that now I have something to tape underneath there. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have any way to, I mean, I could use the tape, but this is going to be stronger, okay? So I'll tape that on the back right there, and then make the other ones on the other side, and I'll be ready to start paper macheing. Okay, here we go, and we are ready to paper mache. Everything is on there, nice and solid, and it's not coming off. Okay, it's paper mache time. So you're going to need to tear up some newspaper into about 1 by 1 inch squares. And then you're going to need some glue and water to make some paper mache paste. We do have paper mache paste, but this is just going to work just as well, the glue and water combination. Make sure these pieces are not too big. I always have students who think they can buck the system by just taking a piece of newspaper and covering it all over and saying, okay, that's it, I'm done. And that never works out. You really want to get into all these nooks and crannies. You want to get around these eyes, you want to get around the eyebrows, you want to show that little area right there. So you really want these small pieces to bend and fold in between and around all these little places. So don't be afraid to use these smaller pieces. It is a process and it does take some time, but in the end your result is going to be much better. So making the glue and the water, pretty simple. I just take a little bit of glue because you know this is going to get thrown away at the end of the class, so you don't need much because that's about all you're going to use today. And then a little bit of water. I don't want to water it down too much, but I want it liquidy enough that it will seep into the newspaper and really get it stuck down there pretty good. I like to use, I'll send you guys some old nasty brushes that I have, because this, if it's not washed completely out of the brush with soap and water, it's going to ruin your brush. Otherwise, that's fine. So I'll just take some of this mixture, lay it on there, pretty simple. and then start putting these newspaper layers on there. You want the newspaper to overlap one over the other so that in the end you get a completely covered surface. So they'll overlap everywhere, okay? And then you put some more of this glue mixture on top so that you don't have these little edges poking up, okay? You want everything to be really super smooth when it's laid down on there. Again, we're gonna do 2 layers. One layer is newspaper, and the other layer on top of the dried newspaper is gonna be paper towels. The newspaper gives it strength. Newspaper is actually pretty strong, so that's gonna give it some really good strength to hold everything in place, and then the paper towel gives it a smoother finish so that you can paint easily on top of it. Also, it's hard to paint on top of this newspaper with all the writing on it and the pictures and stuff. So you can see how I folded that in and out of that little crack right there, and now I'm painting over it. So I'm just gonna keep folding and gluing and smushing down. This is gonna be a messy process. You're gonna get a little bit dirty, and that's okay. It's just glue. It's water-based glue, and everything washes off real easy. All right? So there you go. Have at it. So that's about as far as I got today. I found that putting that watered down glue on this slick aluminum can made it pretty impossible to get that newspaper to stick. So I ended up using glue straight from the bottle, and really that thicker glue, and it stuck much better to that can. Honestly, once you get this newspaper layer on there, then the paper towel layer goes on super easy. So what you're doing now is really giving it a good base paper mache. It's a little bit harder on the masking tape too. That tends to be kind of slippery. But once I get that on there, and then you can see how I'm kind of ducking it around the edges onto the back of it. So I'll let this dry a little bit, and then next week I'll start working on it again. All right, have fun, get messy. Bye-bye.